Good morning and welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. Today we are taking a look at Genesis chapter 48. So today we find out that Jacob is ill and that he is pretty much preparing to die. And so it's important for Joseph to introduce his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to their grandfather. And today what happens is something kind of interesting that doesn't really always happen this way. But when he brought his sons, Jacob does this very interesting thing where he, in a sense, ritually adopts these two boys to be his own. And so what that means is it kind of messes with people's inheritances, and it kind of shows how everything, how things get passed down, so to speak, is what's going on here. So what has happened is now Joseph's own sons are now elevated pretty much to the same level that he is. And then Jacob says, and for whatever other children you have after these two, they'll be your own. So, of course, his other children will still get an opportunity to be part of the inheritance, but not at the same level as these two, Manasseh and Ephraim. And so we kind of have this interesting, who really gets the inheritance? What's important? We see this struggle, again, against culturals, hierarchy, and God not following humans' hierarchy. So Jacob has now adopted these two sons. And then we have this just little kind of beautiful interlude, but recognizing that, he remembers Rachel. Jacob remembers her, and he just has this moment, of longing. But who wouldn't, on their deathbed, have this moment? But we're reminded, too, of the favoritism that Jacob has always had for Rachel. And so, in a sense, having Joseph's two sons elevated to being his own sons, it's like giving Rachel more children. He is still trying to elevate her to everybody else, because in that time, being able to have children was kind of that glory moment for women. So in a sense, he's giving more children to Rachel that can be called hers. And so we can see how favoritism is being played out in all of this. We also have a little moment in recognizing some of the inequalities that have happened among the other children of Jacob at this time. He talks about Reuben and Simeon. And there's this awareness that Judah has kind of risen up as a leader among the people. And of course, some of these names should make sense, because pretty soon we're going to see that these names actually turn into tribes that turn into nations. I mean, we see how they expand over time. So some of these should be kind of familiar words. So anyways, after all that little lesson, we have the blessing that Jacob is going to give to these two sons. And again, I think it's interesting how we get so stuck in culture. Even if we ourselves have experienced the grace of God in surprising ways, even if we have seen how it doesn't always work the way the rest of the world works, we'll still have this tendency to try to make it work the way the world works. So what happens? Joseph takes his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, takes him up to Jacob, knowing that Jacob's right hand will go onto the eldest son and his left hand will go onto the youngest son. So he's made sure that the kids are approaching him correctly. And then what happens is that Jacob does this. He crosses his hands to bless the children. And of course, this makes sense because Jacob himself was the younger brother getting the blessing. I mean, of course, and then his favorite child's the youngest child, one of the youngest children. So, I mean, so in Jacob's head, this all makes sense. But Joseph still tries to say, no, Dad, you're wrong. He tries to take his hand and like Jacob's like, nope, this is how it is. The younger child is going to be greater than the eldest child. And so we just, today what I get out of this is that we can't ever assume to know that just because the world works this way does not mean that God works this way. God can do whatever God wants to, and we have so much more possibility in front of us if we could just recognize what God is doing and not kind of continually keep putting back to the structure. And yes, I'm sure it caused some disappointment for Joseph and everything, but at the same time, he has to realize he is also a benefactor of this randomness, so to speak. Because then, after that, Jacob goes ahead and gives an extra portion of inheritance to Joseph at the end of all this. The one who's running Egypt, the one who has everything at his fingertips, he still has a favorite. And it's one of his youngest sons. And so he's going to give him an extra portion. And it's just, you got to see that. And there's nothing he did to deserve it. There is no rhyme or reason for it, but he receives it. And that just goes to show kind of the wild, mysterious spirit of God in all of this. And so from this point in time, we'll see that tomorrow we're going to see get the two of them mixed up, Jacob's blessing over all of his sons and his passing. And really, we're then at the last chapter is the transition into Exodus. And so we're kind of coming up to the end of Genesis. I can't believe it. And so today, I hope and pray that you can find some new and interesting ways that God has been active in your life or in the life of people around you. That's been surprising. That goes, like, culture would say it's going to go this way, but God says it's going to go that way. And just find the surprising ways that God is interacting in your life. And so thanks for joining me, Pastor Amanda, with Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion, and I'll see you tomorrow.